'Cause if you move with me, if you let me be all that I need to be, then you can ride with me. 'Cause finally it's happening, and I'm not changing anything for you. No, not for you. The whole wide world is opening, and I am stepping right on through the golden light I run to. Can you reach as far as me and still keep on holding my hand? Will you be the one to run as fast and be as still as I can? 'Cause if you move with me, if you let me be all that I need to be, then you can ride with me. 'Cause finally it's happening, and I'm not changing anything for you. No, not for you. The whole wide world is opening, and I am stepping right on through the golden light I run to. Finally it's happening, and I'm not changing anything for you. No, not for you. The whole wide world is opening, and I am stepping right on through the golden light I. 'Cause finally it's happening, and I'm not changing anything for you. No, not for you. The whole wide world is opening, and I am stepping right on through the golden light I run to. Well, can you keep a secret, darling? I'm not who they think I am.
Good morning. My name is Liz Jamieson-Dunne, and I welcome you to the Hilltop Center for Spiritual Living virtual service. As I'm outside feeling the sun, listening to the birds, feeling the wind gently blow the leaves, I am in such gratitude for being here, for being of service for the Hilltop Center, for all of you. Because no matter what path you're on, you're welcome. You're welcome to be here, and it is meant for you to be here this morning. So the focus for January for our theme is the path of imagination. What a wonderful, wonderful thought. When I think of creativity or imagination, immediately God comes into mind. Because to me, the pathway to imagination is through spirit, to recognize that God wants our good, and that is the creation and the beginning of feeling that sense of wonderment. So join me in a quick prayer this morning to welcome you. I know that God is here, that God is present, that God is everywhere, within you, within me. And I yearn for this path of imagination, and I cultivate it, and I welcome you to do the same thing. So welcome, and so it is. The reading for January is based on our theme of Path of Imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. By Albert Einstein. Imagine that you are in a beautiful field. This field is called the imagination field. There are hundreds of colorful flowers everywhere you look. The imagination field is a place that you can visit whenever you're looking for inspiration or creativity. It is all within us. Don't let something that disturbs you to keep you from tapping into that natural resource center called imagination. It flows from God. If you come and visit this imagination field regularly, then it will become easier and easier for you to access this flow of creativity and imagination. Knowing that as we breathe, we slowly allow our body to relax, to be able to open ourselves up to the visions that inspire us, knowing that God wants our good, and our good is part of that imagination field, that the creativity and the unique imagination of each of us resides in the field of love. And when we're in that ocean of love, we know that we cannot be in fear, we can only be at peace and in joy. So tapping into this powerful essence within us is so beautiful. Think of that imagination field of flowers of all different shapes, of colors, of scents. Feel yourself walking through this imagination field and feeling the sense of awe and splendor, knowing that as we consciously create this beautiful image that inspires us, that contributes to our closeness of spirit, that we are all tapping into this, and so it is.
Hello, my dear friends. And again, welcome to another one of our virtual celebrations. You know, this has been a tough week for a lot of us, has it not? I know that when I began working on the talk earlier this week, you know, we are speaking about the path of the imagination. And I had this wonderful Chinese proverb that I wanted to begin the talk with. And I believe that I still will. And then I'll sort of dial into it a little bit. It almost feels, well, I got to tell you, last night as I was reviewing my notes, it felt kind of counterintuitive. But I still want to say it, and I still want to speak about what I want to speak about today. So the proverb goes like this: if you keep a green bow in your heart, surely the singing bird will come. If you keep a green bow in your heart, surely the singing bird will come. You know, one of the fundamental tenets of New Thought is this: thoughts are causative. It comes all the way back to one of the early writers, even before New Thought was coalesced into a teaching, a man by the name of Emanuel Swedenborg, of which Johnny Appleseed, an American icon and hero, was a student of his teachings. But in his work, he wrote that thoughts are things. Thoughts are things. You know, it's almost as if they are what the ancients called a muse, an idea that exists that's looking to find a partner to find expression in it. And I think that comes when we're inspired by something. Have you ever had that moment when you've had this thought, this idea about something that wants to be expressed? And maybe you followed that idea and found that there was grace and ease and support, almost as if the universe was working with you on it. Or perhaps, like so many of us, the idea comes to you and you think, maybe I'm not going to do it. I'll do it later. I'm not sure. And then you find out 6 months later, a year later, someone has taken that idea and become wildly successful. That's the power of a thought as a thing that's wanting to find a partner with. But let's go back, if we can, to this moment that if we keep a green bow, a bough in our heart, that the singing bird will come, meaning that if there is the right resources, if we fill our heart with gratitude, if we fill our heart, our soul, with surprise and amazement and awe and wonder, if we keep nearby a resource that continues to inspire us and lift us up, then our very being will be filled with song. There is a saying that Jesus talks about where he says, that if the mind is clear, the body is filled with light. And what he means by that is, if we are perceiving, if we are looking, if our attention is on that which is clear, then our body will be filled with light. Something that Gita says is this, he says that whatever we build in the imagination will accomplish itself in the circumstances of our life. What we create in our imagination will begin to unfold in the circumstances of our life. Like I've said before, my teacher used to say, that the imagination lays the tracks for the reality train to follow. That we create in consciousness the infrastructure by which the thing itself begins to be created. And this works in one way or the other. Again, if we are filled with joy and amazement, if our imagination is filled with light and song, surely then our life will unfold in such a way. However, if it's filled with fear or envy or greed, if these sort of work, these darkening forces, then what happens is it begins to outpicture in our life. This is fundamental. This is like New Thought 101. It happens on an individual level, and it happens at a group level as well. Because just as there is an individual soul, there's a soul of a family, the soul of a community, the soul of a nation. And this week, I'm sure you, like myself, were filled with horror that our soul was sickened and afraid and concerned as we watched the events of an attempted coup play out before our very eyes, to see violence incited from the highest levels of government and authority playing themselves out. We've experienced, I think, a collapse of an imagination of what is possible. And it hasn't been easy for many people this year. If we look at the statistics of suicide, of addiction, of economic loss, a pandemic that is raging out of control, people losing their houses. Many people are feeling alone, are feeling isolated. That green bough is replaced by a thicket of thorns, of an overgrown garden that is poisonous to the soul. And so the invitation for you and for I is maybe to consider this and how we begin to cultivate it. Because the reality is, we have a choice. We even have a choice of what we cultivate in our own imagination. You know, as I've been thinking about this idea of the national soul and what's happening, I can't help but think of a book, a powerful book, well worth reading. It's called Hate, Inc. by a man by the name of Matt Taibbi. I became familiar with Matt Taibbi's work years and years ago. He used to write for Rolling Stone. But you know, he had a change in his own heart, maybe when he became a father, when he really began to take his writing serious. But in this book, he talks about essentially what has happened in our nation. You know, there used to be a time when the evening news, you know, Uncle Walter or, you know, Huntley and Brinkley, there used to be a time that the evening news was designed that the whole family watched it together. You know, that leftist uncle of ours that was a socialist, or maybe the young one who was a young conservative, you know, the whole family sat together and watched the news together. That was an important thing because it led to discussions, perhaps arguments, but there was a sense of love and of balance within the heart. And what strategically happened is that the news began to be more focused on specific demographics and excluding everyone else. It was no longer something that the family watched together, but perhaps that family began to watch in other rooms. One watched one political ideology and the other watched another political ideology, and both political ideologies were generated with hate, with fear, with suspicion. Because what we know of how the mind works is it responds to this, it triggers this, it becomes addictive. And so we've all been played on our confirmation biases by those who would want to separate us from being in a conversation together, for sharing, for disagreeing in a civil way. You know, there's an old saying that my teacher used to say that the devil only needs to do one thing to create turmoil, and that is convince somebody that they're right and the other person is wrong. And what the devil does really is it convinces both people that they're right and the other one is wrong. There's this wonderful African story that I love so much, Joseph Campbell used to tell, about a village where these farmers are working in the field, and this trickster god, the trickster himself, walks down the field, and he has a hat, and on one side of the hat it's blue, and on the other side of the hat it's red, and he walks down the middle of the farm, or the furrow there, you know, and then he turns around and he turns the hat around. So at the end of the day, the farmers are talking, and one of them says, "Did you see that guy out there walking with a blue hat?" The other one says, "It wasn't a blue hat, it was a red hat." And they get into an argument, and then they go fisticuffs, and then they become so enraged with each other that they go before the village elders. And finally the trickster shows up and he says, no, that was me with the hat, and I turned it around because, you know, sowing discord is my favorite thing to do. As a nation, we are grappling with the effects. Thoughts are causative. And we are grappling with the effects of what happens when the imagination is infected with suspicion and greed and a belief, above all else, that they are right and the others are wrong. And so all of us then are being asked to ponder a level of healing. And it begins, I think, very personally for each and every one of us. And to think about, you know, this book that Matt Taibbi is talking about, this idea that all of us have been played. And to dial it back and to maybe say no to that. And, you know, in Buddhism, there's this term, it's called mental hygiene. And it's like gardening, right? You know, this time of year, in the rose gardens, it's time to prune back. It's time to clean up. The winter time is a perfect time to clean, to make ready for spring growth. And our mind perhaps the same way, as we are moving into this winter time, it's maybe to take a thought and create a new imagination for ourself. And as we hold that powerful thought within ourself, that new imagination within ourself, it creates the opportunity for you and I to become bridges, to become a place of peace, a place of healing, and a place of reconciliation. There's this wonderful poem by the great Sufi mystic Rumi, where he says this: "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and attend them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of it furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing out for you for some new insight." So I think what Rumi is saying here is, our life, the goal of our life is to live an undefended life. And to welcome whatever feeling, whatever emotion comes, and attend to it. To ask it what it needs, what it's afraid of, what it wants, who it wants to connect with. And even if it feels that this thing becomes overwhelming and robs us of something, that perhaps even there, as the mystics have always said, in God all things are possible. A newness can come. A novelty can come. Even in grief, there is possibility. I want to do a little show and tell with you all, if I may, and that is this. I got for Christmas this year this wonderful new translation of the Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive. And I just love the style and the prose. It really just makes things so accessible. And the story of the Gita is an amazing, wonderful story. It is an entire conversation between Krishna, who is an avatar of the divine, and Arjuna, who is his friend. And the entire conversation takes place on a battlefield, the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which means the field of Dharma, the place where we have come to be and do what is ours to do. And this sacred writing, like so many others, can be read on so many levels. It is a story of a battle that was supposed to have taken place 7,500 years ago. It can also be considered the workings within the body itself, or how our mind works, that there is this cosmic battle between what is ours to do and how one lives in integrity against that which wants to usurp and to take what's not theirs to have. And so, Krishna is this wonderful character. His name is Bhagavan, which means God as the summation of all that is good, of all that is true, and all that is beautiful. And what they mean by that is it's an image of God that is approachable, engaging, luring, desiring, our friend. And Arjuna is that part of us that when we face things, our guest house is full of sorrow or fear or whatever confusion that there may be, That if we can listen to these immortal words, if we can listen to the new imagination that's wanting to come forth, that it leads us into a great sense of beauty. You know, what's really interesting is at the end of this great dissertation, Krishna says to Arjuna, you know, I love you. You are my friend, and you may do what you want to do, because that's what love is, right? Love, in order to be love, must be free. We must be free to choose. And so really, even though it takes place on a battlefield, it's a love story. And what I want to invite for us to consider today is to begin to practice an imagination by connecting to that inner guide that all of us have. You know, we are so familiar with our inner critic, but the inner guide is loving and good and desires what is best for us. And so what I invite you to do is join me in an imaginative contemplation. And it is this: imagine yourself in a mystical place, the field of Kurukshetra. And there you are, noticing all around you, friends, cousins, uncles, teachers, mentors. There you are facing something that you know now, that it is important for you to do, but what for whatever reason you may feel confused or afraid or powerless or whatever it is that holds you back. Notice that you are there with your friend, the divine, who is loving you, not judging you, not condemning you, but is there for you. And perhaps it's an image of Krishna. Perhaps it's an image of Mary or Jesus. Perhaps it's an animal totem. It doesn't matter what, as long as it is loving and kind and non-judgmental and gives you your freedom. And if you can be in this place and quiet yourself, you will notice that green bough in your heart. And you will notice that if you are still, that you can hear this divine word. You know, Neville calls this the divine birth that begins to happen. And in his book, Infinite Potential, he says this: therefore, to magnify the Lord is to revere or expand one's present conception of oneself to the point where this revelation becomes natural. When this natural is attained, you will give birth by becoming that which you are one with in consciousness. So let us all attend to ourself, reevaluate ourself by listening to that divine voice within. And in doing so, we give birth to a newness of ourselves. We are born again into a consciousness of love. We create a new imagination that is filled with health and prosperity and joy and love and connection. And in doing so, we become a place of transformation. As we heal our soul, we begin to heal the soul of the nation.
Say way into the blue. It's out there waiting, it could be waiting for you. You're only scared of the things that you can't see. The most beautiful things you only see in your dreams. It's all a mystery, an untold story, a blank page waiting for a line, a metronome just marking time. And now you stand right at the edge, where you're going, where you've been. The only certainty is you and the blue. And the blue. Sail away till you can't see. A speck of land or the person you used to be. A place where you can't hear what they all say. And all the pain and the shame of the world fall away. It's all a mystery, an untold story, a blank page waiting for a line, a metronome just marking time. And now you stand right at the edge, where you're going, where you've been. And the only certainty is you and the and the blue. And the blue.
Thank you again for being part of our virtual community. And I want to take a moment, first of all, to give a shout out to those of you who are part of the Hilltop Spiritual Center here in Fallbrook. I miss you guys. I really miss you guys. And like Kurt said last week, I am so looking forward to when the wheel turns that we can be together again and celebrate. But I also want to speak to you, our new friends in Colorado and Oregon, in Mexico, in other parts of California, and in Washington. We're just so pleased that you are part of our community, part of this fellowship, this virtual community. And as we are rolling out this year, what I want you to know is that none of you are alone. And that if you reach out, one of our practitioners would love to connect with you and pray with you and visit with you. And there's ways that you can connect with them. Next week, I'll be announcing some new activities that are happening, how we're going to be expanding the prayer circle, how we're going to be offering some classes, that I'm going to be doing a workshop on creative imagination. So all this will continue to roll out. And we depend on you. We do. We depend on your continual and generous support. So thank you for that. And I invite you now, just in your imagination, just to see yourself so prosperous, so generous, so expansive. And then expand that imagination out to the Hilltop Center through your kindness and your generosity, that we are continuing to open and grow, and that we are part of the healing of the soul of our nation. And we are doing it by the healing, the expansion, and the amazement of what it means to be alive today. And so to you, my friends, and to those whom you love, and those whom you receive love from, I wish you many, many blessings.